First part you're going to want to do today is get your name on the back. We're going to flip our papers over and we are going to trace 3 or 4, my paper's a little dirty but that's okay, 3 or 4 of these apple shapes. So I want you to put them in the middle of your paper, so that means I see some space on the top and at the bottom and on the sides. Some of these shapes are pretty simple. Some of them have a little more detail, and you can flip them either direction. So if I flip it this way, the apple stem is going to the right, or it could go the opposite way. I want to overlap them. That means I'm sliding these together, and I don't have to trace this part that's touching the other apple. If I only trace the parts that are on the paper, not on that other apple, it's going to look like that apple is behind the first shape. I'm going to trace one more on here and see if I have room for another. So what if I had this one kind of tilted, maybe like it's falling. And again, I'm only tracing that part that I see. If I trace the part that goes on top of this apple, when I pull it off, I'm going to have to do a little erasing. I'm going to have to figure out which one is going to be in front, which one's going to be behind. So if I erase this part, now it looks like this one I just traced is in front. I am going to put a 4th one on there. I have a little more space over here, but I'm going to have it really overlapping, and I'm going to have it behind this last one I just traced. There are my 4 apples. So right now it looks like they're floating. I need to add a line for the table. And we learned earlier this year with our Henry Matisse flowers that if I start on the edge of the paper and I touch the thing that's on the table, I'm going to stop. So right now all of these shapes are below that line. It looks like they're sitting on the table. I'm going to follow, and on the other end I'm going to need a line for the other side of the table. We're going to go right into painting from there. You have orange and blue paint. You get to decide. The table is going to be one color. The background, the wall, is going to be the opposite color. So I'm going to make the background my orange. And what I'm going to do with nice thin coats of paint, so I don't have gobs, I'm really spreading this out so it dries quickly. If I get paint on the table, that's okay, I will wash it later. But I am trying to paint the background, all that nice color orange, and I'm really thinking about just a little thin layer of paint. I don't want gobs, I want it to dry fast. So I'm going to follow. If I accidentally get in those shapes of the apples today, that's okay. We're going to color those and you won't see that. After I finish that background, the table, I'm going to use a different brush. So I'm done with the orange paint. I'm going to go right into the blue paint. And I'm going to try to make that line where they meet really nice. And I'm going to paint the bottom part on the table completely blue. When I'm done, my dirty brushes are going to go to the sink by the window. There will be a cup to put them in so they get washed out. And then if you are somebody who got the table messy like Mrs. Cleary, you will have to get a rag from the other sink to wash it. We spent quite a bit of time looking at Paul Cezanne's artwork and looking at his still lifes. So you are going to use oil crayons today to add color to these apple shapes. Now the oil crayons are dirty, so I started coloring with this and it got a little bit of green on there. That's okay, because Paul Cezanne had a lot of different colors in his apples and his fruits and his still life. So I'm adding a pretty dark yellow color to this apple. And I don't know if I've seen a yellow apple in his still lifes or a yellow apple in real life. So I might want to mix today. I'm going to use a little bit of this light green, and I am putting it right on top of that yellow. Kind of like how that looks. Still really dark right here. I'm going to push dark with this crayon too to try to get it to blend. You can use your fingers and smear them today too. I think that looks pretty good. So on those apples, you can make them red, you can make them green, you can make them mixed colors like I've done. Have fun, but you want them to look like Paul Cezanne's. So that means they're colored nice and dark, and maybe you've tried to mix in at least one spot. The color, I'm going to add a little orange on there. The color is going to really help show that spacing and the overlapping that you did when you traced these shapes. In the background, so that means on the table and on the wall, we're going to try to add pattern using those same complementary colors. So we saw that blue and orange were complementary colors. So on the orange, I'm only using blue. And I started like this zigzag pattern. So I'm trying to make it look the same all the way down the table. My spacing is about the same. I could add another line in there, like maybe I have stripes, or maybe there's polka dots in there. But I'm doing the entire table with the same pattern. I'm not switching at all. In the background, I started stripes. So I was doing up and down stripes, pushing hard, making those lines look the same, stretching them all the way to the top. And then I started to do lines going all the way across. And that meant I kind of had to stop and start a little bit. So I start on the edge, stretch, and when I touch an apple, I'd have to stop and start it on the other side. Stop and start. So today, your apples should be colored looking like Paul Cezanne's. In our background, we're thinking about pattern using those complementary colors that we learned about. Finished projects today are going to go in the drying rack. One last detail I forgot to mention is that outline around your shapes of your fruit. So Paul Cezanne was famous for that outline. Really helped his still lifes stand out and really showed that space and the overlapping. If you're not perfect at outlining like me, you can kind of color in spots to make that line a little bit thicker and wider. Then, once that last step is done, these are going in the drying rack so they don't smear with anyone else's.